Dr. Robert Glover, in your work, there seems to be a connection between being a nice guy and being broke. What is that connection?
That's a good place to start. Unfortunately, that is a generalization. It's not always 100% accurate. I've worked with a number of nice guys who have been quite successful and are quite well off. And usually those guys who have made a lot of money suck at relationships. And it seems like, though, for a great number of nice guys, and I would even put myself in that category historically, I say in my book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, that nice guys are often good at being good, but not great at being great. And meaning, as nice guys, we're trying to do things right. We're trying to be conscientious. We're trying to get approval. We're trying to get validation. And so we'll do a lot of things well enough. I have an online course I developed 20 years ago called Nice Guys Don't Finish Last, They Rot in Middle Management. Meaning, we get kind of part way up the ladder, but then we kind of get stuck there. And so issues around money often come into that emotional dynamic, is that we may do well enough, but often not fantastic. And I think it can be due to a number of things. Part of it might be childhood conditioning around money or wealth. I grew up very fundamental Christian. Anybody with money was on their way to hell. It's harder for a rich man to get into heaven than a camel to fit through the eye of a needle. Mm-hmm. And my parents, my dad grew up as a child during the Depression, my mother tail end of that. So, they grew up with a lot of issues around money. They got passed on to me. So there's part of the early conditioning. There's another issue. The nice guys have a hard time making themselves a priority. We may give a lot of our time, energy, and even finances to other people, trying to make their lives better. And another nice guy piece is that many of us have this issue of outshining anybody else. Like if we outshine our parents or outshine a sibling or outshine coworkers, we think that's going to make people unhappy or not like us or treat us badly. So we tend to find that realm of doing just well enough that we get approval, but not so well that we might get into that rare air of us really not knowing how to live in that world, and that other people might start viewing us in a negative way. Hmm. So, I think a lot of factors can go into that, whether it be codependency, seeking external validation, avoid doing anything that might upset anybody. And as a result, and as a businessman who's marketing product to nice guys, everybody says, oh, you got to have high-ticket items. Yeah, most nice guys won't pay for a high-ticket item either because they don't have the finances or they're not willing to make that investment in themselves.
Hmm. So before we get into exactly how to address that, let's talk about the component parts of a nice guy. What makes up that nice guy? And then we'll talk about kind of how to work through it.
Yeah, if I have to break it down to the basic kind of elevator pitch of what a nice guy is. A nice guy, and this can apply to women too. There's lots of nice girls out there as well, and many of the dynamics are the same, especially in terms of the core belief system. But speaking to, quote, nice guys, I'd say a nice guy is a person that usually at a very early age, when I say early age, I mean a few weeks old, few months old, few years old, inaccurately internalized an emotional belief, I'm not okay. I'm not lovable. I'm bad. I'm not good enough. Now, those aren't words that got internalized. They were an emotional belief system of self and world, which most of our machine language, our most hardwired emotional operating system came from those internalized emotional beliefs. They got stored up in a very primitive part of our brain as very young children. And because we believe we're not okay just as we are, or we're bad even, we try to do two things. One is we try to become what we think other people want us to be, so we'll be liked and loved and get our needs met. Second thing is we try to hide anything about us that might get a negative reaction from anybody else. It might get us shamed or scolded or rejected or abused or abandoned in any way. So nice guys are basically chameleons trying to become, if I'm trying to become what I think you want me to be, it's like every time you give me that kind of nod and a smile, okay, I did it right. I'm going to keep doing that. That got his approval. But, if you kind of like cocked your head and squinted at something I said, like, I go, ooh, I better explain that one, or I better not go there again. So it's trying to get that approval and avoid the disapproval in any way, which is another going back to that core piece of why don't we succeed more fully in life, is because if you're always trying to figure out how to make people happy and avoid making them unhappy, you're not going to be you. There's no real you in there. And so that part of ourselves that would naturally just flourish in the world, that would be curious, that would be adventurous, that would be risk-taking, kind of has a big lid put on it. So that limits us in so many other ways in life.
That limits us. It could sound maybe that it would be the other way around, that if you had this chameleon-like ability to go places and to kind of give people what they want, that you would be able to get where you want. What is the holdup
maybe
by
if
being
you're
a chameleon?
truly Machiavellian, or as you used the term before we started the recorder, a sociopath, maybe you might, if you could manipulate people well enough. But again, if you also have that other piece, but I don't want to get rejected either. So that means I can't shine too brightly, because believe it or not, in our culture, people that shine brightly, guess what? People try to put that flame out. They attack it. They come after it. They shoot it down. And that happens in our own families, in our own culture, in our own community, in our own school systems. High achievers are not typically rewarded culturally, independent thinkers. Kind of think about Ayn Rand's Fountainhead. The individual that just went his own path and went his own way. Well, he had to overcome a lot of cultural and social attack just to get there. So I think a big part of that is that even though, I'm going to go along to get along. And then, like I said, we can achieve a certain amount doing that, but it really limits you from getting much higher, because you're also trying to avoid not doing anything that's going to draw negative attention to you as well. And being successful can draw a lot of negative attention to you.
So if you will get that negative attention, then why bother?
Why bother with what? Getting out of bed in the morning?
With pushing past it and being successful and being that sort of best version of yourself when it's going to bring a lot of heat.
That's why I've paid therapists and coaches good money to help me answer that question and help me deal with it. Because I'm a recovering nice guy, and I've got all my own self-limiting beliefs and all my own personal baggage that came from, as I said, fundamental religion, my parents' own baggage, the culture I grew up in. We've all got those pieces that say, don't shine too brightly. And so, quite honestly, I'm not joking when I say I've done a shitload of therapy. I still have 3 coaches in my life. I have men's programs I work with, many of which are, how do I level up and be my best self? And, and a lot of it involves overcoming my unconscious self-limiting beliefs about self and the world. A lot of it comes with learning how to soothe my internal anxiety state so I can risk, so I can get out of my comfort zone. It does involve being willing to, be real visible. I'll give you an example. I'm working on finishing a book right now. And quite honestly, I started this book probably 10 years ago. And I remember talking to a coach I started working with 8 years ago about my hesitancy in finishing the book and putting it out there, because it's on one hand quite personal. And also it addresses what I see as patterns with both men and women. And, at that period of time, if you said women are a certain way, you could get branded a misogynist, flamed, canceled, whatever. And I think cultures changed a little bit over the last 10 years from that being quite the risk it was. But I decided at the beginning of this year, I was going to start getting up at 6 a.m. every morning, writing for an hour and a half to 2 hours with the goal of finishing the book this year. And I'm making really good progress on it. And I was even just pondering just this morning, yesterday or this morning, just thinking, how easily it was coming to write this. And even as I reread parts I wrote 8 or 10 years ago, that I could tell I was still either trying to guard myself against attack or get in front of any possible attack that might come. And I'm rewriting that. And it's more with I don't give a fuck. I don't care. I'm gonna write truthfully from my heart. I'm going to let the muse have her way with me. I'm not going to hold anything back. I'm not going to try to offend, but I'm not going to try to avoid offending. And as a result, it's a lot easier to write. It's coming much easier when I'm not trying to manage outcomes of, okay, what if I put this out in the world and certain people take offense at it? It's kind of like, okay. It's not like it had the energy it did for me 8-10 years ago. And I've done quite a bit of work on myself in those last 8 or 10 years. And so I think that's paid off in terms of I'm willing to take a bigger swing at things. I'm willing to take bigger risk. I'm willing to be more vulnerable about what I'm doing. And I think that is a process for nice guys in their own recovery, is learning where are our self-limiting beliefs? Where do our fears of loss of love or rejection or attack? How do those manifest? How do we play it safe? How do we avoid taking that big swing? Going for the cheap seats. And I think if we have good support systems in our life and learn to deal with the anxiety and also learn that we'll handle it no matter what happens. We'll handle it. And also turning 70 years old and not giving much of a fuck, is like, oh, what are they going to do to me now? Maybe that helps too. But it's been a process that I've put a lot of work into because I don't want to live my life afraid. I remember when I turned 70 just a couple months ago, and I still feel like I'm 35. So, that's the good news. But I remember turning 40. And as I approached 40, I was kind of struggling with this existential, well, what do I want the second half of my life to look like? And it dawned on me right before my 40th birthday that I thought, I don't want to die afraid. Not meaning I don't want to be afraid of dying. I've since actually dealt with that fear by almost dying a couple times. But I didn't want to live every day going, oh, I don't want to, letting my fears dictate and control my life. So really for the last 30 plus years, that's kind of been my main agenda of life. If it scares me, do it. If I'm afraid of it, that's my new North Star. That's my true north. That's the direction I go. And I'll probably spend the rest of my life, however long that is, just, all right, if it scares me, let's do it. And there's some valuable lessons in there. And, I may crash and burn. I may fail, dramatically, but hey, let's go for it.
Yeah. And Dr. Glover, you mentioned having a support network to do something like this. You also mentioned that you have 3 coaches. So I'm thinking of like the pro athlete who's got the coach for the arm and the coach for the mental game and then the coach for the technical, what are your 3 coaches that you're using?
Okay. One of them is a coach that I started working with 8 years ago. I joined his men's program when I was a year into my third marriage, and it was struggling. And I thought, oh man, if I don't get some help, it's going to end up like the other 2, because I already know my tendencies when things get tough in relationship. So I went looking, and a men's program found me, and it was just really beneficial in terms. And so I did that program for 6 years. Still have connection with that coach, still attend some of his programs, made a lot of friends in that program, created some of my own men's support groups out of that program. So there's one of the coaches I've been working with, and I don't necessarily talk to him every week, but I get in touch when I need to. I have 2 other coaches. One started out as, I called her my nutrition coach because I wanted to get in better shape and eat healthier. And she's now kind of turned into my nutrition / training / life / spiritual / getting on bigger stages coach. And so we talk weekly. And I've got another coach who I've been working with for 6 months or so, who I just, for lack of a better term, call my psychedelic coach, and that we've done some psychedelic therapy around family of origin, childhood wounding type stuff. And now she's kind of morphed and more into a business coach in helping me create my click funnels and my marketing. And then, I have people that want to go to the gym that help me at the gym. My tendency, and this may be probably a strong nice guy tendency, is to try to go it alone and figure it out myself. I did that for a good part of my life, and it didn't change much in my life. When I started getting help, like hired a golf coach to teach me how to swing, a golf club, hired a trainer at the gym, hired a therapist, hired a men's group. As I started hiring people, my life just really took off in leaps and bounds. So I'm a big advocate. Don't go it alone. In fact, I'll often say when I've gotten laid the most of my life is usually when I had a trainer, a coach, and a men's group. There's something about that combination just, help me be at my best. And so that's how I have worked at and how I try to help other men. I have men's programs. I lead workshops. I speak at events. I really think we men need a tribe. Our ancestors, 1.5 million years, we lived as tribe. We didn't have to go it alone. And really up until maybe World War II, men always had their tribes. We had our men's circles, our men's groups, our men's events, our men's things. And now kind of men either go it alone or go seek all of our validation from women. And neither of those things help us level up to our best.
So let's talk about that leveling up to your best. We've got your formula. It was the trainer, the coach, and the men's group.
Good combination. We just start with that, some variation around that. Even if you have one of those, I think if you have a trainer that you have to show up for on a regular basis, and he won't let you quit when your mind says, "I'm tired, I want to quit now," that's a good start right there. Having a men's group, 12-step group. Just a coach that can see you with eyes that you can't see yourself. Yeah. Any one of those would be a great start.
Yeah. So let's take it from maybe base level, because you're a recovering nice guy, as you say, and you're the expert. So if somebody kind of realizes this about themselves and says, I see this playing out in my finances, in my career, what's step 1, 2, and so on?
Well, I'd say, if you identify as a nice guy, first thing I always say is go find safe people. Now, that can be a therapist. It could be a best friend, but probably a therapist, a men's group, a coach. And primarily the reason why I say go find safe people, because I think there's 2 core foundational parts of nice guy syndrome. One is shame. I spoke about that early on in our conversation, that I'm not good enough, I'm bad, or I'm unlovable. So we got shame, and it's inaccurate. We're not bad. We're not unlovable. We're not defective. And the other kind of core component of nice guy syndrome is anxiety. And when I was writing No More Mr. Nice Guy, I've really focused on the shame part, because that's kind of what I was focused on in myself and working with other men as a therapist. By the time I finished writing No More Mr. Nice Guy, I was leading 5 men's groups a week, and I really was beginning to see the influence of anxiety as well. So I think that they really do go hand in hand. So what I really have preached is go find safe people and begin revealing yourself. And as may sound counterintuitive or even like perplexing, why go do that? Well, if we're packing around emotional stories about ourselves, I'm not good enough, I'm bad, I either have to overachieve, or I can't risk because if I fail, I'll be in trouble, I can't get rejected, I can't look foolish. By telling somebody, a safe person, a safe group of people, all the things about ourselves that we don't want anybody to know, not only does it release a lot of that old emotional story, and often if we're in a group of people, we find out, oh, other people have the same kind of story. I'm not alone. And we also get a more accurate message about who we are. So, for example, this coming weekend, from when we talk now, I'll have 8 guys here in my office with me, and I'll do a weekend workshop. And Friday night, we always spend the 3 hours Friday night of 3 or 8 strangers introducing themselves. And I'll ask, why are you here? What do you want to get out of the workshop? What's going on in your life? And all it takes is for one person to tell something kind of revealing. Yeah, I've been married for 14 years, but we're on the verge of separation and divorce. Or I got this thing, I can't quit looking at porn. Or, my woman has been cheating on me and I don't know what to do different. Somebody just get vulnerable and get real. The next guy gets more vulnerable and real. The next guy gets more vulnerable, and the next guy. And all of a sudden, these guys are revealing stuff that maybe they haven't told anybody. I had a guy come to a workshop about a year ago, and on Friday night, he said, I was up all night last night fighting with my wife because this was like in April maybe. And he said, because I've known since November she's cheating on me. And the guy hadn't brought it up until April.
For 6 months.
He brings it up the night before he's coming to the workshops. He'd been up all night, got on an airplane that morning, flew to Mexico, and he's telling this group of men for the first time that he's told anybody that his wife's been cheating on him, and he's known it for 6 months, right? And he began that weekend kind of rigid and controlling and victim-y. And by the time that weekend ended Sunday night, he was open and receptive and optimistic and even laughing. And my wife even commented, because she'll cook us a couple meals while everybody, she goes, she made a physical reference to that guy. And she said, he's a lot more relaxed than he was Friday night. I go, yeah, he really is. So the point is, if we can find that safe group of people and reveal ourselves, it helps us begin releasing messages that we didn't even know we had about ourselves because we internalized them when we were 3 weeks old, when, we were hungry and we didn't get fed on time, or we shit in our diaper and mom made a face at us, or whatever it is we internalize there's something wrong with us. We don't know that's in there. Now, we've maybe gone through life and stacked experiences we've had on top of that says, I'm not bad, I'm not good enough, whether it was struggles in school or being bullied as a child or getting rejected by girls in junior high. We'll stack those on top of the core belief, but they aren't the cause of the core belief. So as we begin releasing that, it gives us a freedom. It lets us risk. It lets us be vulnerable. It lets us connect more deeply with other people. And like I said, we often find out we're not alone, that maybe other people struggle with this. And maybe what we think makes us bad is just normal. Right? It's just normal human, existence. And then that third thing is getting more accurate messages. No, you're not bad. You're lovable. You're a good person. And so we can't do that internally. We can't do that by ourselves. We can't do that release, get those messages, and find out we're not alone by ourselves. So we need, at very minimum, a coach, a therapist, a friend, a rabbi, a priest, whatever. But I think ideally a group, whether it be a men's program, workshop. I started mine in a 12-step group where I started going and just sharing stuff that I'd never shared with anybody, and it felt so good. I couldn't believe how good it felt. So I got excited about going back to that group every week just to share something new that I'd never shared with anybody, because it just felt so liberating and so releasing. And to have a group of guys just go, thank you for sharing, Robert. It's kind of like, oh, nobody got freaked out about that. Nobody thought I was a terrible person. And then I could even go home and tell my then wife the very things I never would have told her because I was afraid of her reaction. I'd tell her the stuff I'd told in the men's group, and she'd go, okay, thanks for telling me that. I'm thinking, that's it? There's no major reaction? You're not leaving me? And it's kind of like, no, I actually feel safer with you because you're aware of it and you've let me know about it. I go, oh, that's kind of a novel idea. So, we need safe people to do that. So there's a starting point.
Okay. So the nuts and bolts of this for that guy who is pretty isolated, he's working from home, he's on the phone and the video games and all that stuff, might be a little tricky. So there's finding the safe people. There's identifying who's safe, because that is a distinction to be made.
Yeah.
And then you also mentioned a 12-step group. I'm curious about how that works. Is that's not going to Alcoholics Anonymous per se, and then finding people there, or is it?
Possibly. Okay. Let me just start out by saying, here's the good news. that this is easier to do than it's ever been in human existence, other than back when we just grew up and were part of a tribe and we didn't have to go looking for a tribe. It was just there, right? So let's say since we've become less tribal and had more built-in connections, it's easier to do than ever. Because I started this process 30 years ago, and there was not a lot out there in terms of just doing what I'll just call men's work. The reason why I landed in a 12-step group is that my second wife said, "You're a sex addict. You need to go, get some therapy. So I'm leaving you if you don't go get help." I thought, well, okay, you're the one that's unhappy and angry all the time and doesn't like yourself, and I'm the one trying to make you happy and please you. I was a nice guy, right? She even said, "Everybody thinks you're such a nice guy, but you're not. You can hurt me. You don't tell me the truth. You're passive aggressive. You cut me down. You embarrass me." So she said, "You need to go get help because you're a sex addict." Well, the thing was, she announced on her honeymoon, "Aren't you glad now that we're married, we don't have to pretend to like sex anymore?" Well, I wasn't pretending. I mean, we had quite a bit of sex before we got married. And so I kept thinking we were going to continue having sex after we got married, right? I don't know where I got that assumption. But anyway, anyway, I went to this 12-step group and quickly found out I was not having enough sex to be a sex addict. And the beauty of it, though, was that it was all men, and some of these guys had some pretty gnarly stuff going on in their lives. Right. They were sex addicts. And so it was kind of like this safe place where I could just, I can tell them that because nobody's going to freak out about that. Or I could tell this. And so even though they're probably all thinking, why is that guy even here? It just happened to be this beautiful place to start revealing me. Now I got a therapist at that time, started just, continuing that revealing process. Maybe in the next year, got into a men's group that was led by a psychologist, a woman who'd written a few books on sexual shame. And she had a men's group, and I started working with her individually and in that men's group that I was in for maybe 5 or 6 years. And I was in that group and I wrote No More Mr. Nice Guy. So I just kept landing in some good spaces. They found me as much as anything. I was looking, but they found me. Now, at that time, in terms of men's work, there were probably some things out there, but is this kind of right as the internet is just, where it was becoming a thing. And so things like Mankind Project or Sterling Weekend Workshops, I think they existed, but unless you had a buddy that had attended something and told you about it, you weren't going to find it. Now, I did do some mythopoetic Iron John kind of stuff, went out in the woods, beat a drum, had a talking stick, said ho, that kind of thing. But that's about all there was. And so I lucked out.
Was that with a group?
In terms of the men's group that I got into?
The sort of Robert Bly, Iron John crowd?
Yeah, at that time, there was like the newspaper might run an article about this Saturday morning thing, go do. And so, they probably weren't super organized groups. They were just people kind of beating drums and holding talking sticks and saying, "Oh." But nowadays, here we are, early 2026. It seems like everybody I know is a men's coach, partly because of the work I'm in. I go to a lot of men's programs. I train a lot of men, but there is just a plethora of men's coach with groups. I'm leading a workshop this weekend. Next weekend, I'm going to Austin, Texas to be a part of a men's program that they brought me to Australia last year to work with them. Now they're doing one in Austin. I go to Austin again later this year to work with another men's group. I just got invited to speak at a men's program in Denver, Colorado in May. And so, these programs are everywhere now, and there's men's coaches everywhere, and the internet has made it so easy to find. So the beauty of it is there are so many resources. It's kind of like you don't have to get lucky, or, the cosmos doesn't have to align itself to give us exactly what we need in that exact moment. Maybe that happens anyway, but there's just so many resources today for men and women looking for any kind of healing, any kind of self-help, any kind of, personal development. It's just everywhere. And, just get on Instagram and you'll get bombarded with ads for people that want to help coach you up in some area of life. And so, that's the good news.
Mm-hmm.
The good news is Well, maybe the bad news is, how do you know if any of it's good? Probably get referrals, get references, talk to people that you know if they've done stuff, and maybe just go give it a try and see if it fits for you. You know, one coach might not fit for you at all, and another one might be a better fit. But you know, everybody's, and somehow I tended to land with people that were good fits. So I landed with a therapist or two or a group or two that, you know, I tried it for 2 or 3 months and just didn't click, or it just didn't, you know, put a dent in what I was doing. So yeah, I moved on. But yeah, if it looks like something that inspires you, scares you, gets you out of your comfort zone, if they seem to have good references and a good reputation, go give it a try. And luckily, you can do so many things virtually nowadays that wasn't a possibility 30 years ago as well. So again, there's just so many resources, which is another way of saying there's no excuse to think you've got to stay in isolation and do this by yourself. And just watching a lot of YouTube videos is not the same as working with somebody who can actually put their eyeballs on you and see the things in you that you can't see.
Yeah, I'm sure it's analogous to watching a lot of fitness videos versus going to the gym and having a trainer.
I don't need to go to the gym and get a trainer. I'll just watch fitness videos. Yeah, exactly. Good analogy.
Yeah. So the key thing here is not just people, it's safe people. I'm wondering if, say, you're a nice guy and your friend is Mr. Nice Guy. Is he that safe person? Do you need somebody who's kind of ahead of you to guide you on the journey? How does that work?
You know, I can't give you, you know, a one rule fits all situations. I know a lot of men who have a really good friend who, you know, is straight with them. They can tell them anything. You know, they'll give you the hard feedback that you need. And what I often have seen guys do is them and that buddy, they'll like start their own men's group. They'll invite a couple of other guys and, cool. You know, they'll start reading a book, reading No More Mr. Nice Guy or Way of the Superior Man or something like that. And they'll start their own men's group. So often I think you have to make a decision. Can you be vulnerable with these people? Can you trust that they will give you clear, non-codependent feedback? And if not, I think it can be much more effective, because the whole thing about going and finding safe people and the beauty of like a men's group or a 12-step group is, even while you may not want to be thought of badly by any of these people, it's not like it's your best friend, you know, family member, your girlfriend, your wife, where you have a big investment in them not thinking anything badly in you. So getting with a group of strangers has a tremendous amount of power in that there's a little bit of, he's a total stranger, I don't care. And like I say, Friday night in my workshop, 8 strangers will just take that risk and share stuff, which is the secret sauce for building a very close bond. And I tell these guys, you're going to leave here Sunday like you've been frat brothers for 20 years. And they do. They leave and they continue the connection, keep talking to each other, do groups, online calls with each other, all because they risk being vulnerable. But if 2 best friends or 2 brothers, which I've had happen, both come to a workshop together, I'll notice a pattern. One or both might be a little bit vulnerable to reveal something that they haven't told the best friend, or they don't want the best friend or brother to go back and tell somebody else they know. And the other thing is sometimes one person will start telling the other person's story for them, kind of, you know, as a way of being codependent, trying to push them out there a little bit. So ironically, there's a certain power in getting with a group of strangers, and it almost is easier, kind of like telling somebody your life story on an airplane. That, you know, somebody you've never met. You know, I was on a plane one time and talking to the woman next to me, and, you know, that, what do you do? What do you do? Where are you from? Where are you going? What do you? And I say, I work with men. And women always want to know more about that. You know, well, what do you do when you work with men? And I remember I was talking about some of the principles I teach men, you know, and out of the blue, this woman just says, I've been having full body orgasms since I was 12. I'm going, okay, thank you for sharing. A total stranger. So, you know, we'll tell things to strangers that we might not tell to somebody we know well because we don't want to lose their approval. If we don't already have somebody's approval, there's not a bigger risk. So in some ways, it might be better to go find a coach you don't know. In some ways, it might be better not to use your own personal rabbi, minister, or best friend because you don't want to risk losing their approval, or tell them something that might get back to somebody else you know and come back to haunt you in some way. So as ironic as it sounds, maybe a group of strangers and or a coach or therapist who you don't know, and of course you'll still probably want their approval and validation, but at least that's something maybe they've been trained to help you process.
Got it. Yeah, this approval part seems really big. And when you mention non-codependent feedback, tell me if I understand that to be something like feedback where the person is going to be real with you rather than trying to say something that you're going to feel good about and approve of?
Yeah, that. You're telling your best friend that, oh, you and your wife had a big fight and you're really struggling and you're really down and this, and he goes, oh, it'll work out. It'll be okay. Don't worry about it. That's kind of codependent feedback. It's just like, be better now. So I don't have to listen to you talk about it anymore. And I want you to be happy. So be better now.
Yeah.
So that could be one form of codependent feedback. And, even in for example, the men's group that I'm in, we created this 8 years ago. We have a call tomorrow. We talk every other week. So we've known each other for 8 years, and it's the same 7 guys, and we're committed for life. I know, even though I'll watch us get codependent with each other, that sometimes people don't slide the blade in where maybe, I also see that it does happen, right? That where, if we were just totally codependent, we might avoid saying that really hard truth about how a guy's been consistently showing up with his woman or with his child, or, we'll come in and say, you do realize this is a pattern that's been going on for some time. You do realize this keeps getting repeated. You do realize you did that in your last relationship. You do. And so when there's not that codependency, we can speak truth with love, and that's powerful. And if a person feels safe with that feedback, and I'm not saying we always like it. I can't tell you as a therapist how many people have come back after I shared something that I even had anxiety sharing because I didn't know how they were going to take it. Maybe come back to group the next week or back to therapy session next week and say, Dr. Glover, I wasn't coming back. After what you told me last week, I was pissed. I was done. I wasn't coming back again. And I sat with it and I thought, I think you're right. And nobody else has ever told me that before. So here I am. Here's my check. So there aren't that many places in life where people will give us non-codependent feedback. Most people don't want to rock the boat. Most people don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Most people don't want to piss somebody off or make anybody feel bad. And actually, it's more loving when we can speak the truth, especially if there's a foundation of trust there. If there's no foundation of trust, is harder to receive. But again, I think that's part of the process of finding a group, a therapist or coach, is learning how to build honest, vulnerable, trusting relationships, because that's what we want in the real world. And so for me, I've always said that therapy is just training for how to have relationships in the real world. A coaching relationship, hopefully, is that way. A group's that way. We're just experiencing and learning the fundamental skills we need to be vulnerable, to get close, to love somebody, to let people love us, to give a shit about somebody, let them give a shit about us. Because most of us actually struggle with all those things. So again, that's not stuff we can learn to do by ourselves. We have to do it in a social context. We have to do it in the context of other people.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Glover, just to get really granular on that context, do you think it needs to be in person, or does virtual fill the gap?
Yes and yes. I think ideal. Now, we don't live in an ideal world. I think virtual is a hell of a lot better than nothing.
Okay.
And I do a lot of virtual work. I run a virtual men's program. The group I'm in, my men's group, where we meet every other week, we're on Zoom. We did get together, most of us this last summer, and went camping for 4 days. We knew each other in person before we got into the virtual group. But when we went camping this summer, some of us had not seen each other in like 6 years in person. But yeah, here we are, in this virtual group. So I'm grateful for the virtual platforms that we have. I've done a number of programs, and I lead a number of programs virtual. And there's something about spending time in person, face to face, that just has an organic experience to it that I don't think we can quite replicate online. And just for example, if I was doing one-on-one therapy here in my office, people come into my office, I could easily see 5 or 6 people in a day, spend an hour with each one of them. And at the end of the day, I'd be tired, but not exhausted. If I get off 5 or 6 hours of Zoom, whether it's interviews, coaching, meeting calls, 5 or 6 hours of Zoom in a day, I'm just exhausted, and I'm just wiped out. So there's something about the virtual aspect that brings in other components that affect our nervous system that I think actually being in person with somebody actually soothes our nervous system, and the virtual can kind of agitate our nervous system. And with that said, it's still better than nothing, and maybe a lot better than nothing. So I try to help do a combination. For example, I've got this virtual men's program where we have several calls a week that people can be on. But 3 weeks ago, we had our second annual conference in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, where we got together for 4 days. And, about 60 guys came to be a part of that. And the guys that, for example, came last year and then came again this year, I just saw so much growth and progress in those guys since the last year. And the guys that, have gotten connected with each other virtually, meet each other in person, for lack of a better way of putting it, it's like they fall in love with each other. They just they go out and they have a great time together. They go do karaoke together. They go out and salsa dance together. We do yogic poses together. They eat together. They tease each other. They love each other. So ideally, we get some combination of in-person, and that's why I do the workshops here in my house. That's why I go speak at events, and I do take advantage of the technologies available to us to reach a broader audience as well.
Yeah. You're describing your program, and you're pointing to your shirt. For those listening on audio, that's Integration Nation.
They can't see it, but when I point
there'll
to
be some who will just be on Apple
when
Podcasts.
I puff my chest out and pull the shirt out like that. Yeah, Integration Nation is my men's membership program that I started in July of 23 to just provide community for men. Men are so isolated that anything we can do to build a community for men, even if it's purely virtual, still helps get men out of their isolation and connect them with other men. So, yeah, Integration Nation, just get that plug in there.
Great. Yeah, we'll put links in the description to some of your things,
of course,
so people can check that out.
Oh, and the coffee mug, too, for those who can't see it. It's an Integration Nation coffee mug with my EMLT water in it.
So a lot of this is about approval. And I wonder what can be done on an individual level to get over seeking approval, if that's something that is driving you. You have exercises in your book. Yeah. Maybe do any of those come to mind or something else?
Quite honestly, risking disapproval. And again, that's why I say find a safe place and go tell the shit you don't want anybody to know. Because how are you going to overcome being worried about people's approval if you don't actually risk getting disapproved of, and maybe even experience having a negative reaction of somebody, really? Or that's terrible, or you're terrible, and have a support system to survive it. An analogy might be, when I became single in my late 40s and in my 50s and started dating and got good at it, a lot of my male clients said, "Robert, teach us. What are you doing?" And I go, "I'm not a dating coach." "Well, teach us anyway. You're having success." So I started paying attention. What am I doing that works? And because I tend to write about it, I wrote and created classes and did workshops and turned it into a couple books. And one of the things that most people, probably most humans, but I'd say especially most nice guys, fear as much as anything is getting rejected, especially getting rejected by a woman that they're attracted to or a woman who they want to like them. All right. This could be their wife, but it could be any random woman. And so being afraid of rejection really gets in the way of actually having interactions with people that you're attracted to. And if you're afraid of rejection, you won't do anything, or if you do something, you'll do it really passively, really safely, and probably really clumsily or inadequately. So one of the things I've always coached, at first I tried getting them over, I'd tell them rejection doesn't hurt. And I would try to prove to them rejection didn't hurt. I'd try to get them to quit using the R word. Oh, she rejected me. No, she didn't reject you. She told you she had a boyfriend and didn't give you her phone number. That was not rejecting you. You're still a decent human being. She didn't think anything badly of you. But that didn't work either, right? So what I tell guys to do is, all right, get a buddy, go out and go get rejected 5 times tonight. Go try to get 5 women to tell you no. That means, don't be an intrusive, abusive jerk, but, go out and especially 5 women that you would normally be afraid of getting rejected by, maybe 5 women who are attractive and younger than you. Go up, approach them, introduce themselves and say, I want to take you out. Give me your phone number. I mean, just cut to the chase. Go as quickly as you can to get told no. And you're trying to get told no and get 5 of those in a night. And I tell you what, it's paralyzing. It still produces, even trying to get rejected, which usually comes quite naturally for many that I met I work with. Trying to get rejected, but there's a paradoxical effect there. That now instead of trying not to get rejected, which makes them passive and anxious, and they're trying to get rejected, so they're more direct and to the point and bold, which I've gone out trying to get rejected 5 times in a night, and I couldn't get it done. I kept getting so many numbers from women that I thought, oh, here's an easy rejection. They go, oh, sure, give me their number and spell their name for me. And I go, oh, is that easy? So the actual trying to get rejected makes you look confident and bold, which is kind of attractive to women in general, right? So, and if guys will go do that, go do it with a buddy. Again, don't try to go do it alone. You can do it alone, but go with a buddy. Have fun with it. Make it a game. Getting that first rejection is really anxiety producing, but they survived and they lived and they went back and told their buddy about it. So, okay, I'm on a roll. I'm going to go get another one now before I have time to think about it. And they go try to get rejected a second time and maybe end up having a cool conversation with the woman. And maybe she does or doesn't give them a number, but they come back and go, that was kind of fun. We had a good conversation. All right, I'm going for the 3rd rejection. And before you know it, they're having fun. They're having a good time. They're pumping their fist if they get a rejection. They're doing a happy dance if they get rejected. So here's the thing that we were so afraid of, that once you lean into it and go do it, you find out, well, no, that didn't hurt. And actually, what actually felt good was facing a fear and being bold and taking that risk. And it often led to some kind of fun interactions that were playful and engaging. And then the woman said, hey, my friends and I, we're going to this other bar afterwards. You and your friends come with us. And all of a sudden, trying to get rejected led to all these really cool opportunities. So I think it's the same thing. And rejection is just around approval and avoiding disapproval. So again, go find safe people to practice it with, and then start risking that with people. I'll give you an example. When I first started therapy, I was working with a woman therapist. And I remember sharing really early on that I was just tired of listening to my then wife, my second wife, just go on and on and on and talk about the same thing over and over and over again. She goes, the therapist says, well, you don't have to listen. I thought, yeah, you do. It's written in stone. My mother taught me, if a woman wants to talk, you have to listen till she's done talking. And she says, no, you don't. It's actually unloving to sit and pretend to listen when you'd rather not, or you're just trying to fix it so she'll quit talking, or trying to divert her attention, or you're just thinking about something else instead of listening. So that's not loving. And I go, well, you don't know my wife. If I tell her I'm not interested, she'll blow the roof off. And so I'm not saying it'll go well, but it's not loving to pretend to listen when you're not interested. And I said, oh, you don't know. Well, So I thought, okay, I'm afraid of this. So the first opportunity I had, I probably could have done it with a little bit more truthfulness, but I think I got pretty close. My wife started in on a story that I'd heard I don't know how many times. And I told her, hey, I got to stop you. I'm tired, and I just really don't have the bandwidth to pay attention. Now, if I'd really been truthful, I'd said, this story fucking bores me to tears, and it's the upkeep time you've told me. I'm not interested. Now, that would have been a little bit more truthful, but I said, I don't have the bandwidth. And she goes, okay. I'm thinking, wow. And about 45 minutes later, she came back and she said, thank you for telling me that you were too tired to listen. I went and called a friend, and I got it all worked out. And I'm going, holy fuck. Is it that easy? Why didn't somebody tell me that a long time ago? So I was afraid of her disapproving of me, being angry at me, being resentful, being hurtful, not talking to me, withdrawing, all those things. And I went ahead and faced the fear anyway, told the truth. I didn't have the bandwidth. I didn't want to listen. I couldn't listen. And it was okay. And the irony that I've found is that, well, let me put it this way. When I was in codependent relationships with my first two wives, first wife, total blue nice guy. Second wife, I was a nice guy when we met. I started working on me. When those two relationships ended, because of a history of my nice guy patterns, neither one of those women really wanted to talk to me for a few years afterwards. We got past that with both women. But when I got out in the dating world and started just being more clear, more direct, more honest, upfront, telling my truth, even when I ended relationships with these women, all these women just kept thinking I was a decent human being and liked me and didn't think I was bad. So ironically, as I was trying to get approval and avoid disapproval, my codependency did a lot of damage. When I quit seeking approval and was just honest and authentic and transparent and lived on my terms, these people, even when it didn't work out relationship-wise, still thought I was a good person. So that was quite a learning experience for me to go, okay, telling people the truth, being authentic, being transparent is more attractive, and you do less damage. You do less damage. And it increases the likelihood of having more authentic, supportive, loving relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Dr. Glover, so much of the tip of the spear seems to be in relationships between men and women. In the workplace, in business, what do you think the nice guy doesn't understand that could be worked on?
In business?
Mm.
Well, I'm going to say something real bluntly and then back off from a little bit. I tell men, don't talk to women at work. Don't even talk to them. Now, these are the nice guys I work with. And there's a number of reasons, and maybe that environment and culture is changing somewhat in the workplace in the last recent years. But unfortunately, most of the men I work with both get codependent with women in the workplace. They'll create what might be considered inappropriate relationships in the workplace. They'll try to get women to like them, and they will sit and listen to women talk about their problems. They will come and try to fix women's problems for them instead of doing their own work. And so I just start out bluntly saying, don't talk to women at work. Other than, whatever interaction you have to have that interaction and move on. Now, because again, so many men I work with do get just codependent, and they'll get what are called covert contracts with women. I'll help her with this, or, we'll just go out and have a drink and that, and it'll be okay because she's, seeming to want to talk to me. And then it comes back and bites you on the ass. And I tell you what, in the workplace, if a woman complains about a man, if she goes to her manager, to HR, they're taking that guy's badge from him, having to pack his bag, and they're escorting him out the door. There's federal laws that protect women from harassment in the workplace, and they know women are litigious, and they know men aren't. So I tell men, wherever you want to do your work or date or, practice social skills, not at work. That's not where you do them. You go to work to get a paycheck and get paid, and treat it that way. Now, that's probably not the question you were asking me about men and women in the workplace. So maybe define a little bit more kind of what you were thinking.
Yeah. So if you're a nice guy and you feel like you're stuck in your career, rather than stuck in dating, let's say, what would you do that's different from the things that are more related to dating?
Okay. Maybe there's not all that different.
Okay.
Because I mentioned before, I've got a course I developed actually when I was just finishing writing No More Mr. Nice Guy that Barnes & Noble, the publisher of No More Mr. Nice Guy, had me develop to teach it. They called it B&N University, Barnes & Noble University. And is that nice guys don't finish last, they rot in middle management. And so certain things that get in the way in the workplace. One is wanting approval. And I tell guys, again, you don't go to work to get approval. You go to work to do your job and get a paycheck. Right? And so approval seeking can lead to being a yes man, going along to get along, not rocking the boat, not speaking up, not risking, working too many hours because you're afraid to set a boundary with your boss that says, no, it's time for me to go home. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll be your best damn employee tomorrow, but now it's time for me to go home. So they get taken advantage of because management knows. I'll always say that basically, management creates problems and expects the working people to solve their problems that they created, right? So management isn't about solving problems. Management's just about how can I get you to make sure I get noticed and get my promotion. So you have to manage up. And most nice guys are afraid of doing that. You have to train your manager how to help you be his best damn employee to help him succeed. And you being his damn employee also means you don't work ungodly hours, right? You're willing to say, nope, I got a wife and kids. I'm going home. See you tomorrow. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll be your best damn employee tomorrow. So that codependency gets in the way. Often nice guys will get caught up in helping other people solve their problems at work instead of solving their own problems and getting their own work done. So that gets in the way. Nice guys are often afraid of risk. Again, they don't want to risk standing out or getting fired or being told, or having something. But, rewards won through risk. And every successful business person I've ever known tends to be a fairly big risk taker and have tended to have failed, crashed and burned a few times on their way up. But nice guys don't want to do that. They don't want to risk that. They play it safe. So again, kind of like dating, you got to be able to risk. You got to be able to quit playing it safe. You got to be able to get out of your comfort zone. You got to risk feeling uncomfortable. You got to risk getting into new uncharted territory. And those are often things that nice guys are really hesitant to do. And so I think the one thing I would suggest for a nice guy in the workplace, get a mentor, kind of goes back to getting a coach, a trainer, whatever. Get a mentor who's already performing at the level you would like to perform at. Approach that mentor and say, I value where you're at. I want to be able to rise up and do what you're doing. What can I do? How can I be of service? How can you mentor me? How can you help me be a better service to the company and me? Find someone. Don't do it alone. Again, find people to help you achieve. And that's, again, an area that I didn't tend to do when I was young. I got to figure this out myself. So get a mentor and be of service to that mentor and just learn everything you can and do that. If there's a situation that is beyond, what you know how to do and is challenging, volunteer for it. Get out of your comfort zone. Go take it on. Go learn something new. Go learn a new skill set that will help you. Be willing to speak up at meetings. I had a client years ago, back when I was based in the Seattle area. And at that time, Microsoft had 40,000 people employed in that area. Amazon was growing at the time. And I had a client, and really a sharp guy, and his wife also worked at Microsoft. And back then, the culture of Microsoft was just give them pizza and Red Bull, all they can eat, and they'll work all night long. Bill Gates used to proudly claim that he didn't take a day off for the first 7 years of running Microsoft. So that was the culture. So this guy comes to me, and he was in PR for Microsoft, and he goes, I take my laptop home every night. I take it home every weekend. My wife does too. We never see each other. I'm working all the time. I'm always feeling behind. And I asked him, what's your goal? What's your desire at Microsoft? And he says, well, I'd like to be a director or a VP someday. And I said, well, show me your schedule. And his schedule had just meetings all day long. He was in meetings all day. I said, when do you get any work done? And he goes, I don't. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I'm in meetings. And I said, do vice presidents go to every meeting request they get? And he goes, nope, don't think so. And I go, okay, let's create a mantra. Vice presidents say no. I want you to start saying no to meetings that you don't have to be at. Now, what boggled me is these people in these companies, they have meetings to discuss what went on in the meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know that? You're from that world? And I'm going, how the
In the
fuck
military.
in the military.
We would have meetings to get ready for meetings.
And then a meeting to process for those who weren't in the meeting, what happened in the meeting.
Yeah.
I'm going, how do you get anything done? Right? So he started saying no, started having a boundary, right? Because he wanted to be a VP. And if that's how VPs behave, he started behaving like a VP. Well, I don't know, a few months later, probably less than a year, he came, had a session with me. He said, Robert, I'm going to apply for the position of being Steve Ballmer's personal speechwriter. That's back when Ballmer was CEO. And as a 2-year gig, you flew everywhere Ballmer went on his private jet, wrote all his speeches, and this probably isn't private information, but Ballmer had a reputation for being a total dick, and I think he still does. Yeah, anyway, enough about it. So anyway, he was going to apply for this job to be Ballmer's private speechwriter. Okay, he applied for that job and got it. He went from a guy that was just overwhelmed, couldn't say no, to within months, he gets that plum job, which means if he's Ballmer's private speechwriter, he eventually is going to know everything that Ballmer knows. Now, if that isn't a pretty good position to be in, I don't know what is, but he did it because he started confronting his nice guy patterns. Now, to wrap that story, he was approaching the end of that 2-year period, and he knew that job was going to end. And he calls me up and says, Robert, I got to come in. Can you get me in? I said, yeah, come in. So he comes in and he says, I've got a meeting tomorrow with all of the Microsoft vice presidents, and Ballmer's not going to be there. And I have to be his stand-in and run a meeting for, I don't know how many there were, all the VPs of Microsoft. And he goes, I'm scared shitless. I'm paralyzed. I go, you know everything Ballmer knows, right? And he goes, yeah, theoretically. And I said, okay, here's your assignment then. At this meeting with Microsoft VPs, at least 2 times, you have to say, I don't know the answer to that. I'll find out and get back to you. Because nice guys hate to say that. They hate to let on that they don't know anything, or that they don't know the answer, or they don't know how to do that, which leads to a lot of suffering, I promise. So he had to say twice, I don't know the answer to that. I'll get the information and get back to you. He gets back to me, I don't know, that night afterwards or the next morning. He says, Robert, the meeting went great. All the VPs were so impressed, so amazed, telling me I did such a great job. And only one time did I have to say, I don't know. I'll find out and get back to you. And it just went beautifully. So those are examples of when you start confronting those nice guy patterns of not wanting to look like you don't know the thing, or starting to say no to things that don't serve you or don't move you forward, or rock the boat, or voice an opinion that might not be popular. That's the pathway to rising up, not going along to getting along, working harder, taking on more people's work instead of doing your own. So again, but the big part of that is risk, being able to risk. Just like me risking telling my ex-wife I didn't want to listen to her talk, or risking approaching a woman and trying to get rejected, or risking saying no to your boss. I'll be back tomorrow and be your best damn employee, but it's time to go home now. Risk.
Yeah. So for someone who's, say, not in a corporate environment that has a clear sense of a ladder moving up, someone who's, say, an entrepreneur, how would it translate?
We're in a weird place right now. Not you and I, but kind of culturally, work-wise. Again, almost everybody I know is a coach nowadays. And everybody's got their marketing plan on Instagram, and everybody's buying their paid ads, and everybody's got their click funnel, everybody's got their offerings, and everybody's doing ayahuasca, and everybody, we're all doing the same thing. And so we all look like clones of each other. But nobody wants a job anymore. Everybody wants to be a digital nomad, right? Everybody, wants to be the CEO of their own company. And that's not a criticism. I haven't gotten a paycheck since 1988. So I
look at you living it up in Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah, just living it up. Look at me. So, I was an entrepreneur before that word had meaning, before people even knew what it meant. I was a digital nomad before that term. Now, but here's the deal. I don't think the majority of people are cut out to be entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
And number one, you got to be smart, because you got to come up with something that people actually want to pay for, right? Whether that's a product or a skill set or service or information, and people got to want to pay for it. You got to be a self-starter. You got to get yourself going. You got to be a good finisher. You got to follow through on shit. You got to get things done. You got to be able to manage your time. You got to be able to say no. You have to be able to get your work done. You have to know when it's time to quit working, because there's always more work that you can do when you're your own boss and you're an entrepreneur. So you have to learn how to actually enjoy the fruits of your labor. You have to learn how to delegate. You have to learn how to hire people. You have to learn how to fire people. You have to learn how to hustle, and you have to love to hustle. Most people don't love all those things. Most people want, it'd be so cool to be my own boss and go live in Colombia or Bali or Austin or Miami or, all the cool entrepreneur hotspots. I know people in all those hotspots, right? Medellin, that sounds good. The thing is, so many of the coaches and entrepreneurs I know live in a constant state of stress, because there's always trying to get that next customer, get that next product, get that next sale, not lose the customers you have. And, many, if they don't have a partner that has a job, they're living, just borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. And I've been there. It's just part of the territory. So now we have an environment, a workforce, where nobody wants to work for anybody else. Everybody wants to work for themselves. Cool. No judgment. Many people are not cut out to do that emotionally, skill set wise. Many are procrastinators. Oh, I know. I'll doom scroll on Instagram just a little bit longer to see what everybody else is posting. Then I'll know what to get on and post. Next thing you know, it's 11 o'clock at night and you didn't get that project done. So, that's common, because, it's just, there's so many distractions. We're also living now in a highly competitive world that if everybody is your competitor, because everybody's a coach or an entrepreneur, we're saturated, with the internet and Instagram and YouTube, with people all competing for the same eyeballs and the same dollars. And maybe the weirdest part of all is AI. That AI is shifting everything. And I saw an article the other day that AI is going to soon eliminate every white-collar job in every industry. We don't need those bean counters anymore. I was talking to my financial advisor just the other day who loves AI, and I said, AI can probably already do everything better than what you can do. Well, but I go, no buts about it. If somebody can go get AI information for free or next to nothing versus paying you, why wouldn't they go do that? And I'm in the same boat. If people can go get the same information from ChatGPT for free instead of paying me, why wouldn't they do it? So that's all the mix that we're dealing with now in the entrepreneurial world. Now, I don't know if I've even come close to answering a question you asked there, but we're
laying the groundwork.
What I'm saying is, being an entrepreneur has never been easy. And even with all the tools we've got now, including AI, which can be a super valuable tool for entrepreneurs, and it is changing so quickly that just learning how to keep up with AI is a full-time job, right? The good news is there's more and better tools and more and better mentors and coaches the more we do this, and there's more competition and a higher bar to reach to be successful at it. So to come back to where I kind of started, because I've never really answered this kind of question in just the way you asked it, because I don't know if I've been asked it. I'm not a very good predictor of future trends. My wife and I both joke that neither one of us are good at picking the best line at Costco. We always pick the line where, one person forgot something they have to go back and get, or they come back and decide to count the money in the till while we're in line. Yeah. So I'm not a very good prognosticator, but I expect we may be going towards a shift, that we may swing the other way, where all of a sudden having a job where somebody employs you and pays you a salary may come back into fashion, maybe not, but they may be kind of completely different jobs than they used to be because of AI. But I think we're always going to need people to do certain things, and the people that can do those things, I think, will be in demand. So I think we may be seeing a shift. And so maybe the best way to answer your question is get out your crystal ball and say, not what is it that today gives me the highest likelihood of succeeding, but what will give me the highest likelihood of succeeding 6 months or a year or 2 or 3 from now.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be a better way to go about, because that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for years. And even with doing it for years, just to give you an example, you got to keep evolving, because my first marketing tool was putting ads in the yellow pages. You know what yellow pages are?
Yeah.
Yeah. You got any in your house?
No.
Do you ever open them? Yeah. Do you stack stuff on top of them, maybe? That's how I started my marketing, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking 40 plus years ago. So if I was still trying to market my business using the yellow pages, I'd be starving. I would already died of starvation, right? So even though what I've done over the last several years to market me, and I was always kind of an early adapter in terms of therapists, I had mailing lists and was offering programs and courses and groups long before other therapists started doing those kinds of things. I had websites before any therapist had ever heard of them. And I've never liked social media, so I've not really been at the forefront there. And so here I am at 70 years old, having run successful businesses, and I'm still figuring out what's next. What's next? Because Facebook ads used to work, not so much. SEO used to work, not so much. Yellow pages used to work, not at all. So I think the real question for an entrepreneur is how do you keep thinking ahead, and how do you get excited about thinking ahead? And I'll add one more piece to it, is that I got invited to go speak at an event in Japan last April. It was a group of entrepreneurs, digital nomads that travel the world with their computers and like to go to cool events like skiing in Japan. And I got invited to come speak at that group. And I met and became friends and connected with a number. And the guy that put that together, invited me to speak, actually started a men's program for these digital nomads and entrepreneurs, which I'm now a member of, right? And it is really cool because so many of these guys speak a language that's a foreign language to me, using terminology and initials for things and jargon, and I'm just going, wow, this is all over my head. How cool. How cool. So I'm still surrounded by people that are farther along at this stuff than me, and I get to be on calls with them and be friends with them and do fun stuff with them, but also keep learning from them at the same time. And that's where actually talking about my coaches, that's where some of my coaches have come from being part of that program. So answer the question, keep getting mentors, coaches, groups of people that help keeping you stay ahead and keep moving ahead, whether that's dating, whether it's relationship, whether it's health and fitness, whether it's work and career. Don't try to do it alone. Because if I was trying to do this thing alone right now, I think my business probably would have crumbled a few years ago, just because things have changed so much.
Yeah. So Dr. Glover, so much of this is social. It's about our relationships. It's about whom we relate with.
Let's say 100% of it's social. How about that?
Yeah. And it's about how we were formed in terms of the nice guy stuff growing up in a lot of ways. So to make sure that we are a good social influence, that we don't make, say, our sons into nice guys or our nephews or whomever, what can we be doing to be better for those around us?
That's a good question. And I get asked a lot, especially by parents, moms and dads.
Yeah.
What can I do to prevent my son from turning into a nice guy? I tell mothers, nothing. Because the more you try to do to help your son be something, the more you're training him to take direction from a woman, and that's what he'll go out and do. It's kind of like my stepson is 20, and he's got a girlfriend that they've been together 3 or 4 years, and they now have a 3-month-old baby. Wow. And I remember one time about 2 years ago, my wife, who's a very strong woman. I mean, she grew up in poverty in Guadalajara, Mexico, 8 out of 10 kids, has been fighting since she was a child. She's tough. She's been a gym rat since she's 15. She's done Muay Thai, kickboxing, and she's very outspoken, right? And I remember one time she was going off on my son, Angel, probably when he's about 17 or 18, and just telling him, don't let that woman walk on you. Don't let his girlfriend, don't let her control you. Don't do this. And I'm sitting there going, wherever did this young man learn to let a woman control his life and tell him what to do? And I told my wife that later on. She goes, I know it's my fault. I mean, she could own it. So when women say, what, my teenage son is letting his girlfriend walk on him, what can I do? And I go, nothing. You can't do anything. Fathers, be a role model. When I started working with nice guys 30 plus years ago, most of the men I worked with, they were around my age back then, reported that most had a real disconnect with their fathers. That dad was either absent because of divorce, worked all the time, or was angry or addicted or abusive. So most men did not have a connection with dad. Many of the men I work with now, millennials and Gen Zs, my son is 40, so he's millennial. Many of them report that their father was a nice guy. And all their nice guy taught them was not to piss off their mother, because that's what he was trying to do, right? So many of the simps of the younger generation have been raised by nice guy fathers who are basically teaching them the golden rule of masculinity nowadays is don't piss off the woman. And, even growing up in a school system where you hear about toxic masculinity, growing up with social media, hashtag Me Too's, toxic masculine, everything's don't piss off a woman. So I know part of the work I'm doing and that some of my coaches are helping me with is they say, Robert, even where you're at 70 and where you're at moving forward, you're still a role model to men of the world. So, for example, my nutrition training coach, you need to keep getting to the gym. You need to be lifting weights. You need to be in shape. You need to be showing the world what it looks like to be a strong, successful male. You need to be continuing to lean into the things that, set a role model to other people. So, which is the best thing I know to tell dads and other men is you keep working on you. You keep leveling up. You get your mentors, your coaches, your trainers. You keep challenging yourself. You keep growing. You keep shedding your codependency and self-limiting belief. And that will be a model to other people. You don't even have to instruct them on it. Just an example. When I see a guy walking by, no matter what age, if he's got good posture, if his shoulders are back, if he's strong and, if he's like lean looking, I don't mean just big and bulky like but if he's just got good posture, I stand up straighter. Do you ever notice that? When I kind of got straighter, you did too. You know what? That's the role model that that we as men can have for other men in our life. So when my now stepson who's 20 or my son, biological son who's 40, they watch me living my life in a certain way, that's inspiring to them. And it's a model to them. And I'm a support system. So, and I'm that way to the men of the world. That's kind of how I view where I'm at in the final kind of lap of my life, is that I'm just an elder and an evangelist to the men of the world of here's how you live a big, bold, adventurous life. Not that I'm perfect at it or I'm the one to show you how to do it. But if men come to me and say, Robert, you're like the good father I never had. Robert, I appreciate the way you live. Robert, I want your kind of energy when I'm close to 70. And so I think if we just know that everything we do is being noticed, for good or for bad, and that's not approval seeking, it's not seeking external validation, is me truly living life on my terms. I guess another way to put it, you may have heard this because I shared this with Chris Williamson a couple years back, and he keeps repeating it and keeps asking people that. But I shared a mantra that the feminine is highly attracted to a man who's comfortable in his own skin, knows where he's going, and looks like he's having a good time getting there. Whenever I tell a female dating coach that, they always go, that That's a great model for young men. Get comfortable in your own skin. Shed your shame, your anxiety. Work on that I need people's approval. Go to the gym and work on you. Hang out with your guy friends. Level up to the best version of you. Find your purpose in life. Live that purpose and go fucking have a good time. Go enjoy your life. That is amazingly attractive to all things feminine, and it's a great role model for the other men of the world. And so that's, I think, the best way we can help the next generations is by us getting comfortable being uncomfortable, leaning into our fears, and showing the young men of the world how to do the same.
Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Glover, for a typical nice guy, receiving from other people can be a real challenge. And that seems like it would make all of this easier. And so much of this is about getting guidance, friends around you, support, that kind of thing. So what can be done to get better at receiving those good things from other people?
That's a whole nother podcast, but because it is a big subject. And honestly, it's, there's been several big pieces I've gone to work on in my own recovery process. One was, again, finding safe people, not doing it alone. Another was connecting deeply with men, because I didn't used to do that. Another was learning how to be honest. Another was learning how to make my needs a priority and give to myself, and learn to let other people give to me as well. When I was married to my second wife, I did a 1-year moratorium on giving any gifts, surprises, and I did this with a therapist, and my wife knew about it. And every time I had the impulse to give to someone else, I had to do something for myself. Right? And that was hard. I felt guilty. I felt bad. Like, oh, everybody else's needs are more important than mine. When I split from my second wife, I bought myself a BMW. Now, I would have easily bought my ex a BMW while we were married, because that would have gotten her approval, maybe. Nothing ever did, but I might have thought it would. And when I bought that, it was a 2-year-old at that time, BMW 330 Ci, so a little coupe, fast car. It was just a joy to drive. And I didn't leave my house or drive it for 2 weeks after I bought it. I got depressed. It was so far out of my comfort zone of doing something so nice for myself. I was afraid my ex-wife would find out and be pissed at me. I was afraid my clients would go, oh, must be nice to drive a BMW. You must be charging too much. Well, my ex never said a word. My clients were all guys, so they all said, oh, cool car. None of them. And I thought, what was I afraid of? But I did it as much as anything to give to myself and feel the discomfort. And so even dating, every woman I've ever been with says, Robert, you're difficult to give to. So I've worked at letting women give to me. I dated one woman. I met her at Nordstrom. She sold me shoes. So she worked in retail. She came over to my apartment. We'd been dating for a few months, and I had some clean clothes on the couch. She started folding my clothes and putting them in a stack. And no, don't do that. Don't do that. She goes, I like doing it. She goes, and I'm good at it. And she goes, I won't put your clothes away, but I'll fold them. And I go, I'm not going to put them away either. I'm going to leave them in that nice stack. And every time I see that stack, goes, oh, somebody loves me. Mm-hmm. And so I actually started leaving my clothes, my clean clothes, after I washed them on the couch, because I knew she'd get pissed at me she goes, where's your clothes? Oh, I put them away. I folded them. She goes, I told you to let me do it. So I had to let her keep doing that. My wife, just a lovely giving person. I've made her life so much better. She's made my life better. But she scolds me every now and then. She says, Robert, let me give to you. A lot of times I'll be sitting here doing like a call like this, and I've got French doors on my office, and I'll see her, and she'll come sneaking in with a glass of coconut water and set it on the edge of my desk where nobody can see her. And I'll get up from the table because I need a fork. And she'll go, where are you going? And I'll go, I need a fork. She goes, I'll get it for you. And now, if I let her get my fork, that makes me like my dad. Mrs. Glover, get me a fork. And I don't want to be like my dad, right? So I have to let her get me a fork. And it's her way of showing me love. So to this day, I'll take the garbage out front. And she'll go, you need help? And I go, no, I got it. I'm just carrying the garbage out to the street. Now I go, yeah, sure, come on with me. I've learned to say yes. And you ask about me having so many coaches. For example, the two female coaches I have now, even part of that has been practicing letting them give to me, letting them serve me. Because, no. Okay, yes. I'm going to say yes. So after 30 years of working on it, I'm still working at letting people give to me because, number one, it does make me uncomfortable. I don't think I'm worth it, or I owe them something, or I'm a burden to them. And so I keep saying yes when people offer to give to me. And it helps my bucket be full and overflowing, which lets me be more generous to the world. And my giving now is I can give to people judiciously and what they need to receive, not what I need to give them to feel good and get their approval. And I'm giving from a full bucket, not an empty bucket, hoping that they'll give back through my covert contracts. So yeah, this is a big deal. So again, and it's another one, you can do some of this alone. You can start giving to yourself. So me getting a nutrition coach is a way of giving to myself. Me going to the gym is a way of giving myself. Me going to sleep at a decent hour and getting enough sleep is a way of giving to myself. Me taking my dog for a walk every morning is a way of giving to myself. Me doing a morning meditation and doing some devotional reading is a way of giving to myself. So I can do some of this alone. But a whole lot of it, I need other people to help me, which means I need to surround myself with people who want to help give to me, and I am. I've worked really hard to do that. And it means saying yes to the people who want to, and it means also asking them to give. Yeah. I'll give you a quick example that I know we're about to wrap up. I got invited to speak at an event, and I won't say which event. And I'd been invited last year, and I didn't go because it conflicted with something else I had. And usually when I get invited to speak at men's events, I may not get paid, but I get all my expenses covered, travel and lodging and stuff like that. And it's a good way I stay visible, and it lets me do what I love doing. I get to stay connected to men and work with men and speak to men. Well, I got invited to this event again, and I'd already thought ahead and had booked flights to it because I was already going to be on the road anyway. And so I got a formal invitation, and I said, I've already booked my flights. I'm looking forward to coming. And they said, great, here's a link to, pay your registration and for the hotels that we've reserved a block. So basically, I pay to register for an event I'm going to speak at, and I'm paying my own way to get there and for my hotel. Well, I thought about it. I thought, I need to ask. And I wrote back last night and said, typically when I get invited to speak at events or attend men's events, my expenses are covered. And I've already paid for my flights there. I'm cool with that. But I would appreciate it if you would comp my registration and cover my hotel. That was hard for me to do. Now, I've done that many times. Like when people invite me to go to Japan or Australia or Denmark in the last year, I say, yeah, I'd love to come. I fly business. Okay. Nobody's blinked at it. And that's I've gotten where I'm good at that. But that was hard to do, too, to say I fly business. And so even just saying, I'd like to be comped, I don't want to pay for the registration, and I'd like you to cover my hotel, there's still a part of me that says, oh, somebody's going to be mad at me. Somebody's not going to like that. But I thought, okay, I have to do it just because it still creates some anxiety. So I still notice these things come up, and I still lean into them. And we'll wait and see what the answer is. And usually I get told yes. I get told yes.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Robert Glover, before we get to our last question, where's the best place for people to look for you online?
Oh, I would say I'm here in Puerto Vallarta. Okay, for those of you who can't see my T-shirt or my coffee cup, all that product placement, integrationnation.net is my men's membership program. We have several weekly calls. I do interviews. You interviewed Ryan Taraban. I interviewed Ryan Taraban a while back. Mark Manson I've interviewed. Gary Chapman, who wrote 5 love languages. I added a 6th, just fucking be happy. That's my love language. I didn't say that to him directly because he's a former Baptist minister. I've interviewed Allison Armstrong. So that's my men's membership program, and we have really cool annual conferences. And then my website is drglover.com. That's for my courses, my workshops, my coaching, my other programs. So I know you'll put all of that in the show notes because that's what you guys do.
Yes. And Dr. Robert Glover, last of all, I'd just like to know, what's it been like for you to be the no more Mr. Nice guy for all these years?
Oh, my. I guess there's a few layers to that. In some ways, I don't know. In some ways, I'm just being me, right? I'm just living my life, and it's actually led to, a lot of people, a lot of emails, a lot of responses saying, Robert, thank you for writing your book. Thank you for doing what you've done. You've changed my life. When I started getting those emails 20 plus years ago, I made a commitment I would read every single one of them and just sit with it because somebody took the time to write me because I'd had an impact on their life. I can die complete knowing I've accomplished something of significance beyond anything I ever would have expected, and I've made an impact on the world. It's actually led to a little bit of actually visibility. I mean, I was actually pulling my Jeep out of my driveway about 3 weeks ago, and a guy walking up the street from my house, Dr. Glover, is that you? And I was in Japan, and a guy walked up to me at a breakfast table in the Tokyo Marriott, or Dr. Glover. I've been recognized in various places around the world, which is kind of cool and kind of scary too, because I don't know how many other people have recognized me and didn't say anything. So was I standing up straight? Did I pick my nose? I was in Austin, Texas a few months back with my wife, and we walked into a restaurant to meet my coach and her husband. And my wife decided to pick a fight with me right as we walked in the restaurant. And we sat down, and a guy came in with his dog and said, Dr. Glover, I just wanted to come in and say hi to you. And I'm going, here, I'm fighting with my wife right now. So, I mean, it brings all of that. So I do have a greater visibility. It opens a lot of doors for me. I've gotten to travel to a lot of places. I've got to meet a lot of really cool people. And yeah, I think it's just giving me a sense that I can die complete. And I know I make the world a better place just by how I get up and live my life and the words that I share with people and the things that I do. So I guess that's the best answer I got for you. It just feels good. It feels good.
Oh, beautiful. Well, Dr. Robert Glover, for embodying the things that you talk about and write about so that you can be that whole version of yourself, and for sharing that with all of us, for your book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, and for taking this interview with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for doing what you do and spreading the word.